Hi, I'm Lorena. I'm a spiritual life coach and breathwork teacher, and my primary focus is on Neville Goddard's teachings. And I'm here to help you shift your state of being and recreate your reality. If you are interested in one-on-one coaching or you would like to do some breathwork with me, you can find information for that in the description box below. So today we're getting a bit vulnerable and open and raw because I'm going to share my personal journey on how I changed my self-concept. I already have a video on self-concept. It's actually the most popular one on my channel to date. So if you've not seen that, I recommend you check that out first because it will really cover the basics about what your self-concept is, why it's important, and how you can change it generally. But I am hoping that by sharing my personal journey, it will be a bit more detailed, a bit more relatable, and less abstract. Because in this video, I will talk about the not so favorable things I felt about myself, the journey I've had, where I am now, where I'm going, and how I actually changed my self-concept. So let's go all the way back. When I was born, I felt worthy and I felt loved, and my parents were very loving and supportive, and I was so joyful and so innocent. So I felt loved and I felt worthy, and there was no reason to believe anything other than that. I remember being so carefree, but then eventually the comparison started. I got compared to relatives, other children, and that was nobody's fault. Nobody did anything really wrong here. And it was also largely indirect, but it was enough that I felt it. And not only did I feel it, I made it mean something. Because if you hear often enough that you're not good enough, you start to believe it, right? Luckily, that also works the other way around. So with feeling the comparison and getting the idea that I might not be good enough, I kind of lost my sense of self-worth. I became insecure. I started feeling that something must be wrong with me. And school sucked. Oh my God, I hated school so much. Partly, I was also bullied by other children, depended on where I was and what it was about in the moment. But it wasn't severe, but it was, again, enough to leave an imprint on me and for me to make it mean something must be wrong with me. And if I really sit with the feeling that was most prominent in that time, it's shame. And there's a really nice quote by Brené Brown, because she says there's a distinct difference between guilt and shame. Because guilt is, I made a mistake, but shame is, I am a mistake. And I definitely felt like a mistake. So what did this do to me? I would not be myself. Because I felt something was wrong with me, I would often play a role, so I would be seen, so I would be accepted. I would even make up stories. I would lie a lot, so people would find me interesting. But of course, that just made me feel worse about myself because now I was also lying and making even more mistakes and being even more wrong. And I was not showing my authentic self because I didn't feel like I could. But I still kept doing it because at least I was seen. But I was seen for not myself. I was seen for someone who wasn't me. To me, it was the only way I could get some praise or a sense of worth. And that was the only way I would feel loved or lovable. Because love very much felt conditional on my achievements. I would focus on being really good at school, although I actually didn't really care. I never really cared. But I put in a lot of effort because I knew that if I put in a lot of effort and I get good grades, I'm gonna get praise. I would get a sense of achievement. A sense of achievement meant praise, and praise to me meant love. I had an immense fear of being judged. I felt like I could never be myself. I could never be my authentic self, not even around my friends. I didn't feel important. I didn't feel good enough. I didn't feel seen. And when it came to romantic relationships, no. I would never have one. The boys I liked usually weren't mean to me. Lots of other people pranked me when it came to the boys I liked. But the boys I liked usually weren't mean to me, but they would ignore me. They would avoid me. And I would even sense a sense of pity from them, which made me feel just as dumb and worthless as being made fun of made me feel. And again, which emotion did that bring up? Shame. And then later on, the pattern in relationships was always the same, be that in romantic ones or in friendships. I actually never had a committed romantic relationship. It never got to that point because I didn't feel worthy of it. And be that in friendships or in romantic relationships, I would love fast and hard, and then I would be abandoned or ignored or betrayed. And often I wouldn't even get closer. So I saw these patterns in my life for a really, really long time. And then years ago, when I learned about Neville Goddard's teachings, I was ready to break them. I finally wanted to feel loved. I wanted to feel worthy. I was not aware of where those feelings of inadequacy came from, and I was not aware of where these patterns came from, but I was getting excited about the prospect of being able to manifest whatever the hell I want. And maybe that's how you feel, or how you felt when you learned about conscious creation. You got this excitement, I can actually change something in my life. But I did not look at my past. I didn't look at my patterns. I didn't look at my childhood. It was too painful. I wanted to close the door, leave it behind me, and move on, and manifest the life that I want. I actually wanted to control my life, and I wanted to manifest the love that I was craving so badly. But I was going about it the wrong way. I did not realize that my self-concept would be the key and that I cannot run from it, because I tried to run. I didn't realize that I didn't need to reject or ignore or deny my past experience. I didn't realize that I could look at it, accept it for what it was, learn from it, and have compassion for myself, my past self, and my experience. By the way, this is why I don't just tell you to recite affirmations and deny your emotions, because I tried that and it didn't work. What worked for me was creating awareness around the patterns, seeing how my reality reflected my self-concept and my beliefs and my assumptions perfectly, 100%. So now, am I done with the self-concept work? Do I have a perfect self-concept now? No. I still have moments where I might get this sense of unworthiness, but that's okay. Like, it's a program. It's not my fault, nor is any programming or conditioning that you have your fault. It's not your fault. And for me, it left a scar, but I don't need the scar to go away because I learned from it. And I don't see myself as the victim of my experience anymore. I own it. For a really long time, I was trying to prove myself. And I was trying to prove my worth so hard. Even when I got into conscious creation, I was still focusing on external validation. But really, there is nothing to prove. When I go back to myself pre-trauma, pre-programming, pre-conditioning, pre-judgment, pre-shame, I'm like, I'm perfect. And I don't mean this with arrogance. I don't mean this as, oh, I don't have any flaws and I'm better than others. No. I mean, I am good enough just the way I am, and I have always been. In my authentic being, I am lovable and I am worthy, and I have always been that way. So let's get to the meat of it. How did I actually change my self-concept? I know I kept you waiting for this. And again, let me repeat, just like you, I'm still on a journey and I will always be. This is never fully done. But here's what worked for me. I accepted the past for what it was. I acknowledged where it came from, and I acknowledged that I didn't do anything wrong, nor did anyone else, because we're all just operating from our level of consciousness, right? We are all projecting our insecurities out into our reality. We are all perceiving things based on our self-concept and acting from that place. And although my journey hasn't always been easy, there is such perfection in it. And I really learned to appreciate this perfection, because after having sat with it, really sat with it, and after having healed it, the fog has lifted and I can see it for what it was. And I can see that it could not have gone any other way. I don't need to get frustrated about it. I don't need to get frustrated with myself. It was, and it still is, a perfect mirror. So I needed to create awareness around the past and the feelings associated with it, and then I needed to feel them, because by feeling the feelings, by feeling, for example, the shame and the fear and the judgment and the humiliation, I accepted it. That's important because it made me drop the resistance around it. As long as I was forcing things and trying to control the external, I was only kidding myself. Even now, when I see patterns repeat in my life over and over again, I still know it's a perfect mirror. A mirror of how I perceive myself and how I feel about myself. A perfect mirror of my self-concept. So self-concept is really, really key, and I wish I'd learned this earlier. And when I say I created awareness around it, I don't mean you need to overanalyze things, but you do need to be radically honest with yourself and acknowledge where you don't feel the way you would like to feel about yourself. You don't need to force yourself to feel a certain way about yourself when you don't. But you do need to look back and ask yourself, why don't I feel this way about myself? Where is it coming from? And is it also really the truth? You can feel all your difficult feelings and have all these difficult negative thoughts, but you do not need to believe them. And even when you notice that you do believe them, you can question them. You can ask yourself, is this really the truth? And if you really sit with it, then you notice it's programming. Then you notice that it was never the truth. You notice that it was always just a story that you told yourself about yourself. It was always just a narrative that you created based on something that happened, because it might have happened once or twice or 10 times, and suddenly it became a pattern. And then you expected that to repeat over and over again, and you made it part of your story and your personality. But you were not born feeling unworthy or unloved. You were not born feeling fearful or anxious. And when you really go back to the past and look at it objectively, when you step out of yourself and your experience and you look at what actually happened and what you made that mean, then you can see this. And then your self-concept almost changes automatically without you needing to force yourself to believe something else or do techniques or reject an experience for yourself or any emotion that you're having, because that's when you embody it. And that's when you notice that it was never really about changing your self-concept and turning into somebody new. It was always just about removing the layers. You've never been unworthy. That was the story you started telling yourself. It's not that you need to start telling yourself a new story, because it's not like you were unworthy and now you need to convince yourself that you're worthy and that's your new story. No, you've always been worthy. And the story that you're not worthy was just the story that you need to remove. As Neville Goddard says, you are already that which you want to be, and your refusal to believe it is the only reason you do not see it. If this was helpful for you, I would love it if you subscribed and left me a little comment telling me about your experience maybe. And please remember, you are so worthy and you don't need to do anything to prove it. And I'll see you soon.